Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's Author Talk series brought to you by the Library Speakers Consortium. The Library Speakers Consortium is a partnership of more than 500 library systems across the US, Canada, and New Zealand with the goal of making Author Talks more accessible to communities of all sizes. I'm Brandon Adler, your host and moderator in conversation with each of the acclaimed authors and presenters that you will hear from throughout our series. Today, we are so thrilled and excited, and insert all of the adjectives, to have New York Times bestselling author Hannah Nicole Maehrer with us to talk about her Assistant to the Villain series and her most recent book in that series, Accomplice to the Villain. I hope I'm on screen there.
You are. You're perfect.
Okay. It's like off to the side and half out of the...
I do this every day on TikTok too. When I'm like holding it up, I'm like, I don't even think I showed the cover, but they get the gist.
Yeah, right. Anyway, thank you for being here.
Thank you for chatting with me. I'm so excited. Thank you guys for hosting me.
So excited. I know everybody's ready to get started. I do want to get that kind of standard housekeeping information out of the way that keeps everything running smoothly. We have compiled some questions that were pre-submitted with registration, but you can also continue to submit questions during the talk by clicking the questions button that's next to the live stream video. You can start doing that now. The more questions, the merrier, but do keep in mind, there are a lot of you tuning in today, so we will get to as many questions as time allows. And don't worry if you have to leave early for any reason whatsoever, all registrants will receive a link to the recording in about 24 hours. Now, to formally introduce our guest for today, Hannah Nicole Maehrer, or as TikTok knows her, at Hannah Nicole May, is a fantasy romance author and book talker with a propensity for villains. When she's not creating bookish comedy skits about villains and assistants, she's writing to Taylor Swift songs. Her biggest passions in life include romance, magic, laughter, and finding ways to include them all in everything she creates. I'll get that right. Most days you can find her with her head in the clouds and a pen in her hand. But today you can find her right here.
So they make you write your own bios, which I think should be against the law. Because it's so awkward. You're like, it feels like the deepest level of narcissism because you're like, I'm writing about myself.
I don't agree with that because yours is great. So you did a great job.
Thank you. I always think that about other people
because every time I'm asked to do it, I'm like, oh, this is no.
I think everybody mutually feels this way about their own bios, but then other people reading them are like, no, it's great. And we all are just thinking about things that nobody else is thinking about.
That's true. It feels like the biggest form of imposter syndrome.
It is. It's the most prominent, I think.
Okay, so I have to say, because you included Taylor Swift in your bio, and tons of people asked if you were still a Taylor Swift fan and what you thought about the engagement.
Oh my God, am I still a Taylor Swift fan? I think I'll always be a Taylor Swift fan.
Does that ever stop?
No, I've been a Taylor Swift fan since I was like 11, since I was in middle school, for most of my life, really. I'm still like a huge fan. I was very excited about the engagement. It was truly the only thing that got me through a 4-hour flight delay. I kept going to myself, but Taylor and Travis are engaged, so it's okay. It's okay. Everything will be fine. I'll get home, but they're engaged, so everything's good. So it came at the right time, and I think they did that on purpose just for me because they knew my flight was delayed 4 hours. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the very optimistic way to look at it.
Yeah, glass half full always.
I love it. Okay, so what we're really here for, though, is to talk about your book. So for those who are tuning in that haven't read any of the books, can you give kind of a summary or an introduction to your world, Assistant to the Villain, Apprentice to the Villain, Accomplice to the Villain, and let everybody know a little bit about it?
Yeah, so Assistant to the Villain in the universe is essentially a fairy tale satirical comedy about a fantasy villain's office. And our story kicks off with our heroine, Evie Sage, who is very bubbly and bright and by happenstance ends up working for the villain. And in book 1, they have to figure out who in the office is betraying them to the heroes. And with each book, Evie gets better and better at evil doing. So she gets promotion with each book. It's a job with advancement. So that's great. She didn't even have to make a LinkedIn. Caveats are like severed heads and like potentially stepping on an eyeball, but the benefits are great. So who can complain?
The benefits, especially for Evie, seem pretty great and a little frustrating at times, but
always frustrating.
So we did have several people ask about the inspiration for the series, and as I understand it, it's a little unorthodox how you went from the idea to publishing. Yeah. So I'm going to ask Haley's question from Martin County Library System. Haley says, "What was the inspiration for this series? What made you want to turn this skit series from TikTok into a book series?" So can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so I've always been a writer since I was really young. That was always what I wanted to do. I told my parents I wanted to be an author, I think when I was like 9, and they were like, okay. Like they were so supportive, but like when you hear that, you're like, it's like saying I want to be an astronaut. Like it's not like a easy job path or it seems like so far out of reach, I think. Yeah. But as I got older, I leaned into writing more. And then during the pandemic, like everyone and their mother, I downloaded TikTok and found Book Talk. And there were book skits. And I thought they were like so fun. So one night I had a little too much wine and I posted a Bridgerton video and I went to bed thinking I'll delete it in the morning. And then I woke up and it started to go viral. And I was like, oh no. But I let it sit because, you know, I am nothing if not willing to make fun of myself. So I kept making comedy skits that were bookish related, and I was trying to think of fun ideas, and I was writing something completely different. It was very dark tonally, like it was not like comedic in any way. It was not satirical. It was not fun. It sounds so bad. It just was like a dark book. And I started making the skits, and I remember in the first like time filming the episode, I thought this is special. Like this was a lot of fun to film, and I would love to do more of these videos because it was so much fun. And I posted the first episode when I was at my nanny job. I put my phone down, and then after I got the twins down for a nap, I picked my phone back up, and the video was going like very viral. And I was getting all these comments like, this should be a book, this should be a book. And I remember commenting back, it's going to be, I'm going to make this a book at some point. I just don't know when, where, why, or how. And a few months into making the skits, the story became like so aggressive in my head. The characters just started like building themselves, and the world did as with every single video, that I sat down to write the book. And I got to share that journey with all the people that were watching the skits. And now we have people coming in that don't even know about the skits, which is wild, because at first it was like, oh, I assume everyone picking up the book has seen the skits because that's where it came from. But now I'm getting it from all sides. It's really cool.
That's amazing. So the skits that you did before this, they were based on other people's books?
Yeah. So I did like well, yes and no. The only ones I really did were Bridgerton skits. Okay. If you go I didn't take any of them down. So if you go back to like 2021, you too can see me tape sideburns onto my face with pieces of paper that I scribbled on with brown marker. And I taped them onto my face to be Anthony with his like mutton chops in the first season. I was really committing to the bit. So I did those for a bit. And then I sort of fell into doing videos like if I was in an enemies to lovers romance, or if I was in an office romance, and that evolved into if I was the Morley Gray Fantasy Villain's assistant. And that's where we stayed.
Do you still, is part of your writing process to write the dialogue and skits?
Oh yeah, I talk everything out loud, which is why so often like I need to be alone when I'm writing, because I sound, you know, like I've lost my mind, because people will pass and hear me talking to myself, and I'm like, this is part of the process. But they feed the other. Like sometimes I'll be writing a scene in the books and I think this will be a funny skit if I take this one little piece of it and make it a skit. Or vice versa, where I will think of like something I've done in a video and pull it and be like, this is a thread that's going to be tied into the books. So one feeds the other. It's really a blessing to have two creative mediums to get to play with this story visually and through writing. So it's unique, and I feel really lucky because people are always like, I love your marketing. And I'm like, thanks, it was an accident. It wasn't on purpose. And it's still so much fun. Like I still enjoy doing the skits so much. Anytime I get a chance to make one, I take the opportunity because it's just a blast. And I love interacting with people in the comments.
I can picture you kind of talking to yourself and like doing different voices and like I can totally picture it.
It's literally the skits I do just by myself without the camera. So it's way more embarrassing. With the camera, it's mildly embarrassing, but the half of life is more fun if you're doing things that might embarrass you.
True. I agree with that. Liz from LA County Library is saying, I'm a big fan, have been since you started spinning this story on TikTok.
Oh,
Do you think your next book series will have a similar beginning?
I don't know if I should say. I will say that I truly think I will be 80 years old and still making like skits out of my books. So I think that any book I go to, whether it be within the same universe or outside of it, I will be making character skits and playing with them that way, just because it's now become a part of my creative process to like act things out. And that's how I get to know the characters. And that's why I feel so close to Evie as a character. Because she started off as me. Like it was me, like if I was the Morally Grey Fantasy Villains assistant, and I kind of like, it's really interesting because I get to watch the videos slowly evolve, and you can kind of see it going from me to Evie until Evie becomes like her own fully fledged person. And my bestie, I love her. So I think I'll always be making bookish skits. I will for sure continue with any books that I write.
I love to hear that. The skits are so much fun.
Thank you. That's so nice. Thank you.
Shay from Wright Memorial Library is saying, tell us about the inspiration for the titles. Did you always know where you wanted the series to go from the very beginning? Yeah, I guess that's a really good question, Shay. Because it's like served to you on a platter, assistant to the villain, and for each title, it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the A's were kind of just ended up being how it worked out. It wasn't like we have to have all A titles at the beginning. But when I was discussing the next title with the marketing department, we had like a few suggestions that we were all bouncing around. And they threw out Apprentice. And in my mind, I was like, well, Evie is going to get promoted with each book. So it would make sense if each title represented her, her next promotion within the office. And I really liked that line. So after doing 2 A titles, we kind of fell on the next title, which actually ended up being book 4's title, which I haven't announced yet, so I can't.
I was going to say, and book 4 will be called.
And literally, I'm this close. I'm teetering on the edge to accidentally saying it, but I think I'll be able to announce it soon, so I won't have to.
We still have 15 minutes, Hannah.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, I think I'm supposed to announce it next week. So if we can just wait till next week, and if anybody hears me say it, no, you didn't. Don't tell on me. I'll know it was you, and I will find you. I won't, but. Yeah. And then we settled on Accomplice after that, because again, it's that kind of equalizes them. So the guesses for book 4 have been, I almost don't want to announce it because the guesses have been hysterical. They've been like crazy. They're either really close or really wild, and not even a little bit like on purpose. I think acetaminophen to the villain was one. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, he needs acetaminophen. He probably gets headaches like all the time from all the mess surrounding him. Genius. Or people go, wife to the villain.
That's a good one.
I'm like, oh, you guys are manifesting, and I love that for you. They're like, speak it into existence.
Well, let's pivot to one of the main characters, Evie. We have a few people asking. I know you just touched on it a little bit about your inspiration for Evie. Sarah from Wanakee Public Library is asking. Julia here in the live chat was asking as well. Can you talk a little bit more about your inspiration for Evie and kind of where you got her personality and all of that?
Yeah. So obviously her and I have a lot of mirroring traits, because it started from me. I was like the base model, and then she evolved into something absolutely amazing and way more, way smarter than me. But with each video, I kind of got to know her better, and it became like this thing where Evie was something I leaned on whenever I was struggling with something. And when I started, and I've talked about this a million times, but I will talk about it again. So sorry if you've already heard me talk about this. But when I first started making the series, I was in a really low mental health place. It was sort of like a touchstone for me to get out of my head for a little while. And that kind of became the way that Evie was for me. And that's kind of how I formed her character. She kind of became someone that I processed all of my really difficult emotions through. And she sees the world in a way that I want to continue to see the world, which is through a lens of optimism and hope, and the belief that people can change, and the belief that people can be good and bad. And it really just depends on what choices they're making, that we can grow from our mistakes. That was sort of like the core of her character. But the other part was sort of a journey of overcoming this really intense need to please people. And I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, where you feel like your worth and your value lies in what you can do for others. And without that, like where is your place in the world? Where is your value? So I really liked the idea of starting with a character like that, working within a villain's office and seeing how that environment sort of shapes her and helps her grow. Because you wouldn't normally think like a bubbly, bright person would be working for the villain. It's half the fun of their dynamic, but it's also it's the perfect environment for her, because it's pulling her out of her sort of bubble that she's formed around herself, where she's like, everything's fine, even though it's not.
Smile constantly plastered on her face.
Yeah, like everything's good, but it's not. So yeah, I think that that's sort of how her character came about, and I get to know her better with each book and each video as well. But I like this.
I love that.
Yeah.
Melissa from Harris County Public Library says, who came first, Evie or Tristan, the villain?
I would say well, actually, technically, the villain came first, because I was being me in the first few videos. So it was sort of, or the assistant. And Evie didn't really have a name yet. I mean, the villain didn't have a name until I was like 20,000 words into the book, because it felt like so much pressure to name him, because I'd been calling him the villain in every video. And I would make a joke out of the fact that we don't know what his name is. So that was a lot of pressure. But the villain came first, technically, because, you know, in the first video, I'm knocking on the door, and the door is a bathroom, by the way, but it's the villain's office. We're going to pretend. And I open the door and I'm like, hello, sir. Good morning. Do you need me to like clean up the blood? Would you like a towel? I'm sorry to interrupt your torture session. Like, how are you? Would you like a coffee? That sort of thing. So the villain came first. But I would say I knew Evie better before I sat down to write the villain, because, you know, there's only really so much you can do when it's just you and a camera. So that character kind of like was the center of the videos for that time. And then I didn't really get to know the villain as well until I sat down to write the book, but I knew him a little bit. We had chatted.
Did the ancillary characters, like Edwin and the Pixies and things like that, was that all part of the book, or were you doing skits on those things as well?
No, so they were not part of the skits at all. There's actually Tatiana was not in the skits. I added her on later. She was a character. There was a few characters, Kingsley included, that I think the core people that I had in the skits originally before I started writing the book, and this is like maybe 3 or 4 months of making skits before I sat down to write the book, was Blade, Becky. Becky was actually in episode 1. So Becky's an OG. She's been since the beginning. The villain and Evie and the dragon. And that was it. There was like the interns and things like that. And I would say, you know, silly. Oh, Marv was in it too. Marv was, he was always the front gate guard. Yeah. So those were the only core characters that were in it. And then of course I've added everybody since like I've merged the things. Yeah, they kind of, it was cool because these characters just started popping up on the page, and I was like, oh, hey, hi, nice to meet you. You're awesome. Cute. You can stay. I like you.
Laura from Calgary Public Library saying, do you have a favorite villain that inspired Tristan Maehrer?
No, so I don't have like if I said a favorite off the top of my head, it would probably be like Hades or Maleficent. Okay. I love Hades from like Disney's Hercules, from the mythology as well. But that particular Hades is so funny, and he's so real. I would not want to live underground either. There's no sun down there. I think that he wasn't really a villain. He was just right and upset and lacking vitamin D, and everyone needs to cut him some slack because he's hilarious. I do find villains that are comedic or can crack a joke so likable. I always think, how can I hate them if they're funny? Make it make sense. Maleficent was a lot of fun too, especially the Angelina Jolie version. I love a villain backstory and understanding how they got from point A to point B. I just think it makes it makes the original story so much richer because you have that lore. So those are two favorites. I think the Vampire Diaries really influenced me a lot with morally gray characters. I was obsessed with Klaus He's the reason I love Dimples. So if you ever
love
watch
Klaus too.
Oh, he's just, everyone's like Damon or Stefan. I'm like, Klaus.
Yeah.
They're like, he killed someone. I'm like, he was just feeling silly. He was in a silly mood. He didn't mean it. I can fix him. I can't.
He usually only does it if he's really angry.
Only if he's really upset. And it's not anyone I care about. So it's fine. So bad. But that's like the kind of conversations you have when you watch those shows. So, you know, the pipeline is clear how I got to where I am now.
Well, we're so happy that you did.
Oh, thanks.
Rebecca from Lee County Library System is saying, how did you start your world building after your videos on TikTok went viral? So how did you enrich that world after you basically took it to the page?
Yeah, so this was one of those instances, and lots of people do it both ways or one way, where you build the world and then you build the characters around the world, or you build the characters first and then you build the world around the characters. So obviously I was building a world around characters that I've already kind of established. And I sort of had in mind when I went in to write it that it would, and I remember saying in the first video I posted announcing that I was turning it into a book, that I said it was going to have like Ella Enchanted, like Anne Hathaway movie sort of vibes, like Shrek, like all of the quirky fairy tales that were like funny, but had like a deeper meaning that we grew up with. That was sort of the world I wanted to, you know, paint. So a magical forest, and the magic system actually was something that I'd always wanted to do, which is something where, some people have magic and some people don't, but the magic is awoken by something traumatic. Like that's what awakens the magic. And there's myths of magic that, and this is how core healers begin, where it's such a moment of pure joy that the magic wakes up. But most of the time it's a trauma that happens and the magic kind of awakens to protect you, but not everybody has it. And I also sort of liked the idea of a world that was like painted by the gods with magic. So this was something that I just sort of leaned into my whimsy and all of the things that I think about the world. Like sometimes I look at the grass and I'm like, it looks like it was painted by somebody, like somebody just went over it with a paintbrush. So literally just little thoughts, I think, on the daily. I am like, it's my world. I could do whatever I want. So someone did come and paint this lawn. So yeah, I think that's how that was the attitude I had going in, and everything else just kind of like, fell into place. This is a world that's really ridiculous. So I have so much room to move around. Like people will be like, explain this. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna, no, figure it out.
I like that answer. No. Nicole is saying the slow burn between Evie and Tristan is chef's kiss. What do you think the perfect sweet spot is between their slow bloom relationship and keeping your readers interested?
Oh, you know what? And this is, I think when I went into writing the first book, and this is something I've learned with each book, that it's, making readers happy is so, so important to me. And I'm so grateful that I have people that like the things that I make. But I am a firm believer that you should like what you're making the most. And you should be so proud of what you're making. And that is the first and foremost priority. And so when I go in to write, these characters are so viscerally real to me that everything just kind of blocks out. I don't think about anything else but what the characters are doing. So it's one of those things where it isn't an immediate thought because I'm just in it. And if they don't want to do something, they're not going to do it. And if I try to make them do it, they literally flip me off and run away. So I'm like, I can't make them do. I've been shoving their heads together for 3 books, like, please kiss, please. So it's one of those things where I always hope it comes across where truly the characters do not want this. I hope you sense it too, because when I was writing it, they absolutely did not. And I can't force anything in good conscience because I care too much about it. And I think that's, and I'm very lucky that I have very patient readers that are willing to wait. But I also love a slow burn. It keeps me on the edge the entire time of my seat. I'm always wondering, is there going to be a kiss? Is there going to be a lingering touch, a lingering look? Tension is so huge for me in romance. Like the scene in Bridgerton where their pinkies just go towards each other when they're walking past each other. I literally paused it. I had to scream and take a lap around my house. Like it was too much for me. I was like, this is spicy. Like,
yeah,
this is explicit content. Like, not safe for work.
I can remember being like,
I know, I was like giggling, or the Pride and Prejudice hand flex, like the famous Darcy hand flex. So yeah, I think slow burn in general, it definitely is a balancing act, but I think you can't go wrong if you're, staying in tune with the story first, because everything else sort of falls into place after that.
Yeah, the characters are leading you toward the right balance, I think, because I've never once been like, oh, come on, just get it over with. Like,
I have, in all fairness. I'm like, please, everyone's mad at me. They blame me first, and it's you. They're like, no, you're not gonna kiss.
I think you're doing it perfectly.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. I'm like a nanny.
My opinion is the one that matters. So.
Yes, it matters most. So I'm gonna take that as gospel.
So in the second book, in Apprentice to the Villain, we get to see kind of this relationship between Tristan and Evie's little sister, Bloom. Yeah. And it's so wonderful and endearing. And Chesney from Helen Hall Library wants to know, can Lissa paint the villain's nails someday or braid his hair? We have the tea party, but now I'd like to see makeup and tiaras and nail polish.
Listen, I am writing book 4, and I will literally put that in there just for you, because that's hilarious. Honestly, anything to like, he's so funny because he's such a stoic character. He's very crabby. He's like, I hate emotions. But I love forcing those characters to confront like children, like a really pure-hearted child, because it's immediately their soft spot. Because how are you going to be mean to this precious baby angel that's asking you to have a tea party with them? Like, he's like, of course, naturally, I'm not a monster. I'm gonna have a tea party with this little girl. I think that he's definitely taken on. I really love the whole office, and there is a quote about this in book 3. It's not a spoiler. Where Evie kind of notes how the office has sort of taken Lissa in as one of their own. And it's nice to have people to share her with, because they had a really tiny family growing up with just her and her dad and her sister. And now they have like this whole group of people that love Lissa just as much. And that's such a relief, I think, for Evie, who has been her sole source of like love and affection and support for her entire life.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely wonderful to like see the found family come together and watch it grow throughout the series. It's wonderful. So it looks like Marv is making an appearance. Marv from Forbes Library says, how often do you laugh out loud while you're writing?
So often it's embarrassing. So often I'm like, if there was a camera, and I have put cameras on me while I'm writing, and I am laughing at the things that I write. And that's usually my gauge for if it's funny, or at least if I think it's funny, because humor is so subjective. My only gauge is if I think it's funny, because if I'm like, do other people think it's funny? I'll get 2 in my head, and there's no way of making sure everyone thinks something is funny or everyone likes one thing. So I think the safe bet is always to do what, again, feels right for you, what makes you giggle, what makes you proud, what makes you like happy about this project. So yeah, I laugh a lot, like too much.
No.
Often.
Mary from North Branford Public Libraries says, your books are laugh out loud funny. How do you come up with the hilarious situations that Evie gets herself in? Do you ever draw from personal experience? Now, we know that Evie evolved into her own character, but I would imagine some of the things she gets herself into.
Yeah. I think I definitely get inspiration from my family. My family is very bouncy with their humor. That's sort of like our love language is teasing each other. So it's what I know. I've never pulled like a direct inspo from anything, but just being around my family gets me excited to write, because they're so funny. They're all hilarious. And there's so many ridiculous things are said that I am just used to hearing ridiculous things every single day. And so when I go in to write, I am writing ridiculous things. And that's all I know. It's all I know how to do. It's my one trick. So I have to stick to it. I definitely pull inspiration from my real life, but nothing direct. I think there was like one situation with my brother that I was like, I have to put this in a book at some point, because it made me laugh so hard. My oldest brother is like very honed into his work. He's like serious. And I was bothering him because I'm his little sister and that's my job. And I was sitting on the couch and I just out of nowhere was like, I wonder if sharks attack manatees. And he was like, what? And I went, I wonder, do you wonder? And he's like, no, I'm working. I'm busy, like at the table, like, and I was like, so I was like, I'm going to look it up. And he went, okay, I don't care. And I looked it up and I went, interesting. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. And I went, Avery, don't you want to know? And he went, no. And like still honed in on his computer. And I was like, aren't you burning with curiosity? No. About 5 Mississippi seconds go by, like long seconds. And then he snaps and goes, just tell me. What's the answer? So like things like that, I'm like, material. I'm going to use that. Yeah. So
yeah, there's
my family.
I can already like picture a way that you can use that if there's like a revisit to the Fortis Fortress.
Oh, 100%. I am definitely relate to Becky on the brother front because I also have all brothers. So that was a very cathartic part of the book for me. In the most loving way, if my brothers are watching this. And I mean that in the most loving way.
Sarah says, where do you draw the line between a morally gray villain and one that gets a redemption arc and one that is truly irredeemable? Is there room for both in a story?
I think there is room for both in a story. And I actually think it's important that all are represented in a story because it kind of becomes a scale of where we're towing the line of what is morally gray, what's evil, what makes someone like truly, purely evil and nothing else. Because human beings are such complicated things. And we're talking about book characters, but book characters feel like real people to us because they become, we get to know them. We know their memories. We know their desires. We know what they want to accomplish in life. So it feels like we know these people. So when they mess up or make a mistake, it might frustrate us as readers or as like consumers because we're like, why are you doing that? It's like when you get mad at a friend, you're like, what are you doing? That's a bad choice. Why are you doing that? But they're people. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to make bad choices. So I think that the difference is what's behind it. I think that there are certain acts that obviously, and I'm talking about like heinous acts, obviously that are irredeemable. But if we're talking about morally gray characters, I think that most morally gray characters are redeemable because what makes them morally gray is that they often are doing something good, but they're willing to do what's perceived as bad to get it done and to get it accomplished. And I think those characters are actually important to have like the balance between them and then the morally righteous characters that are like, we have to do everything by the book this way. And that's sort of a theme I explore in my books. It's a theme in so many different stories that I watched growing up where it's what makes someone evil and what makes someone good. And what's the difference? And also, is it actually evil or good? Or is it just what perspective you're seeing or what side you're standing on? And this was, again, direct pipeline because we read a children's story in 4th grade about the big bad wolf. And it was from his perspective. And we learned in the book, he wasn't actually trying to blow their house down. He just had a cold. And I was so angry on his behalf that he had been misunderstood this whole time. Everyone's like, the big bad wolf. I'm like, why are you calling him that? He has a cold. He's innocent. This is mean. And I was like, the piggies, he just wanted to be friends. Like, he just kept going, no, I'm not. Choo! And then like blowing their house down. I'm like, why are you building a house made of hay in the first place? That's ridiculous.
Let's talk about who's the ridiculous one here.
Yeah, that is insane. Like, obviously it should be made of brick. It wouldn't have fallen down in the first place. And then we wouldn't be here. So I think that was a story that I really started to think about perspective. And I really think that empathy and reading go hand in hand. So you kind of really do have to lift yourself out of your own head and see it from somebody else's perspective. So I think it is a fine line, but I do think there's room for all of them within a story for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of perspectives, Kelly from Indianapolis Public Library says, your writing style is very seamless. Is it difficult to switch perspectives, like going from Evie to the villain, or does it present a fun challenge, which we see as the series progresses, that it's more than, you start switching between more than just Evie and the villain. We get a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, actually. It's really fun because I love writing in both Evie and the villain's perspectives because they both think so wildly different things, but also similar in a way. And that's sort of something the characters all have in common, is that they all have like their own unique voice, but they all have like a tie that pulls them all together. It's really fun. I like jumping into somebody else's head because I get to know them better. It feels like I'm truly hearing them speak. When I say I'm letting the characters tell me the story, I know it sounds like woo-woo artist like craziness, but I'm like, no, that's really what's happening. I'm letting them, the first draft is truly just them telling me what the story is going to be and how it's going to be told. And then of course editing, like things change and stuff like that. But no, it feels seamless to me because it almost feels like something takes over and it's just doing it and the characters are just speaking. And that's how their voices sound. And I just think of how they would talk, and that's sort of how they narrate themselves. So it makes it a lot easier. Writing from a frog's perspective was probably the craziest thing I've ever done. And it was so fun. I had such a stupid good time doing that. I finished the first one and I had to like look at myself in the mirror and go, this is the most ridiculous thing you've ever done. I can't wait to do it again. That was fabulous. This series leaves room for lots of creative joy, like new things.
Yeah, so much creative joy for you and for us. I mean, opening it to chapter 1 of Accomplice to the Villain and seeing Kingsley, I was like, yes, we finally get to know what Kingsley is thinking, because you get a little hint of it here and there throughout the first 2 books with his signs.
Yes.
But you let it slip in the green room that Kingsley almost didn't even make it into the book. So what is that about?
So yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because it always like shocks and it almost horrifies people when I tell them that he almost wasn't in the book. And it was because in the first original draft, we were going, and then when I signed with my editor, we were going back in for developmental edits. So things like scenes were moving and being cut. Like in the first draft, there was all of these flashbacks that we cut, and then instead I wove them into the story. Like big things were like changing big plot points. So lots was happening within the book. And at that time, they had shown me the cover of the book. And Elizabeth Turner Stokes did the cover. I adore her. She's amazing. She's done all the book covers and she's done the best job. And she's the one that drew Kingsley. So we owe her for Kingsley. Drew him on the front, and we kind of all became obsessed with him, me and the team at my publisher. And me and my editor kind of had a back and forth where we were like, should we put him in the book? Should he be in the book? It's like when you're at lunch and you're with your friend and you're trying to decide if you're going to get French fries. You're like, should we be bad? Should we get French fries? Let's put it in the book. So we had an editing round and I called it Add Frog. And I went through and he felt so seamless. It took like no time because every scene, he just made it funnier. And it felt like one of those things where one of those magical writing moments where you're like, I'm a wizard, I think, because it felt like he was always supposed to be there. Like it was just those scenes were like waiting for him to pop in. And it was really fortuitous because his storyline and his arc sort of took over another character that I was going to introduce in book 2. And I hadn't even named this character yet. And I was like, his name is Kingsley. So yeah, that's sort of how he came about within the books. And I never thought I would be, have so many frogs. I have so many frogs. People keep giving them to me and I always take them because they're adorable. And I can't put any of them in boxes because I watched Toy Story too many times as a kid. And I think they will suffocate. So I put them all out and it's starting to take over. And I love it. It's honestly amazing.
Ashley from Coatesville Area Public Library says, I am absolutely curious to know how you came up with having him use signs to speak. And she continues, I literally live for Kingsley. So yes, a lot of outraged people if Kingsley never would have made it.
Listen, we love him. We love him. And it was because we were going back and forth about like what he would be able to do as a frog when we were discussing him. Yeah. And at first he still has this mode where I was like, I want him to be like Salem the cat from Sabrina the Teenage Witch show. From I think it was the early 2000s or the 90s version, because he's just so sassy and he's just there to say something sassy and go. Like that's his whole role. And I was like, that's the vibe I want him to have in every scene, where he's just like so done with everybody. But how can we convey that if he can't speak? And we're looking at him like on the cover, holding up this sign that says help. And we were like,
that's how she drew it.
That's literally how she drew it. If you look at book 1, I have the hardcover edition. Oh. you can see he's holding the help sign right at the top. So yeah, he was holding the sign, and then my editor was like, what if he just like held up signs? And I was like, one word, challenge accepted. This is going to be hilarious. And it was so much funnier that it was just 1 to 2 words on a sign rather than have him say anything. And it also just made it such a more interesting character because you don't know what he's thinking. You just know like by one word. So I do think it was absolutely the right move, because by the time we get to his POV, we're all like, me included, like chomping at the bit, like, what is he thinking about? What's he doing? Like, what are froggy human thoughts? Like, I don't know.
That was delightful. Delightful to see. So Becca from Willard Public Library is saying, these books have so many iconic microtropy scenes. Do you set out to include those from the start, or do they come up naturally as you're writing?
They usually come out naturally. I honestly, if I try to force something, I always end up cutting it because I always end up hating it. I will read the scene and just be disgusted with myself, and I delete it. I'm like, oh my God, this is garbage. But I do think that that's like the part of my brain that's like, this doesn't fit, girly, you gotta cut it. So we're gonna make it suck so that you definitely cut it so it gets out of here. So I can't force anything, but there are, like, I tried to force a 1 bed trope in book 1 and it did not work. But yeah, so there's moments where I'm like, oh, this is an opportunity for this while I'm writing. So it usually happens like organically. Every now and again, I'll like picture a scene in my head, and if I can work it in to the book in a way that's cohesive, I will. And if I won't, then I'll just save it for a later date, for a bonus chapter, perhaps. Something else.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Danielle from Bartholomew, if I can get that out, Bartholomew County Public Library says, just finished Accomplice, and I feel like looking back, there are so many Easter eggs you left us in Assistant and Apprentice. Were they all there intentionally, or did you find things to call back to as you plotted out your later book?
If you go back to like my old videos from 2021, like I've been telling people the entire time what was going to happen at the end of Accomplice. It's funny because I'll have like memories pop up on TikTok where it will say like, you posted this video like this many years ago, and it's a video where I'm like literally spoiling the ending, and I'm like, because I had it planned out for so long. Even when I was doing the skits, I had it planned. Like it was always it was like 4 years coming to fruition. I can't express how satisfying it was to finally like get it down onto the page. I almost screamed because I was like, oh, it's there. Like people can read it now. That's crazy. Like, because I had to hold it in for so long. It was like such a secret. But yes, it was in purpose that I wanted people to be able to go back to books 1 and 2 and be like, oh, she was like blatantly telling us the entire time. Like everything is very deliberate on purpose. In fact, one of the twists at the end of Accomplice was actually originally going to be revealed in book 1. And my editor was like, this is a pretty big reveal for book 1. Are you sure you want to do that? And that's all she said. And I went, no, I don't. And I deleted it. I was like, they're not going to know till book 3.
A little bit of morally gray in there.
Yes. So that was in the first draft. So I of course was like, I'm going to plant seeds though within this book and then the next one, so that people can go back and be like, oh my God, and find some Easter eggs. Because I love doing that when I read a book. So I wanted to be able to do that for everybody else.
Yes, it's so much fun. Cinema Dave from Broward County Library is saying, recently it seems there's been a woke trend promoting villains as protagonists. What is your perspective on this?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't fully understand it. Would it like because villains are main characters?
I guess I've not heard of the trend that.
I think that if we're seeing a surge in villains as characters, sometimes it's like comedic. Like in mine, it's a lot of the time it's comedic and satirical, but it has like a deeper meaning behind it. And then sometimes it's perhaps very serious. I think that we are drawn to stories like that because oftentimes these are characters that have had something really bad happen to them. And we're kind of watching them evolve into something that we're all sort of capable of evolving into. And it's like we're all one bad day from becoming the villain. And there's kind of a lack of pretense to villains. That's something Evie notes a lot when she's in the office. Like there's a complete lack of judgment because they all know why they're there. They all know who they're working for. So it's okay to slip up and it's okay to mess up. And it kind of feels more relatable to, as a real person, to be reading a fictional character that is making these mistakes. They're obviously on a grander scale than the mistakes, hopefully, that we're making in real life. But I think seeing any characters make mistakes is very, reminiscent for just like an average human being that makes mistakes pretty much every day. I do it 10 times a day as a rule, at least. So it's nice to read about characters that are flawed in that way. And also, you always hope for redemption. And it's that hope in us as human beings that we hope people can be redeemed and that we hope people can choose to be good. And to grow. And that's something that I think I always held that value. And I think lots of people do when they go in to read a book. I think it's great. I love reading about villains. And even if it's in a case, it's sometimes just interesting to read about a character that is evil so that you can know what that is and understand it. I don't think we should shy away from those things. I think the more you know, the more powerful your brain is. It's Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
There's more than one way to be evil. So.
Yes, 100%. And it's, again, perspective. Sometimes it's like that person might think you're evil and you might have just been setting a boundary. That's how gray that area can get.
Yeah. That's absolutely true.
Yep.
Absolutely true. Mariah from Lima Public Library saying, I'm a college student studying creative writing. You have great wording and amazing descriptions in your books. How do you find these amazingly fitting words and descriptions? I find it harder to write fantasy when I have to create my own slang words or crazy descriptions. So how do you find this?
I won't lie, and it feels clunky at first because it's not like your natural speak, like saying Deadlands take me. That was not I say it all the time now though. But the more you do it, the more you'll adapt to it. So if it feels like not kind of funny and it doesn't fit, give it time. It's not a natural fit because it's not something we say on the day-to-day. It's I'm not from the South, and I'm not saying that everyone from the South that says y'all, but I'm from the Northeast. So when I say y'all, I feel like I'm playing a character and I sound like they know I don't, I shouldn't be saying y'all. Yeah. But all my friends say it. And so I started saying it and now I don't even think about it anymore. I'll be like, y'all. And I was like, oh, I never used to say that. But it's, again, it's the same thing. I know it's a really weird comparison, but when you're writing fantasy, it's the same thing. When you're making up your own slang and you're like, this sounds funny, give it a minute, give it a book. And honestly, it took me all of book 1 to get used to it. And then by book 2, I was just naturally, organically typing Deadlands take me, gods, that sort of thing. So yeah, give it a minute. It's okay if it feels a little awkward. It probably is going to work out if it feels awkward.
Yeah. I can picture somebody at the cash register trying to check out their groceries or something and looking in their purse and being like, oh, Deadlands take me, I forgot my wallet.
Yeah. I do it all the time. And I'm like, oh, that's not, people won't know what I'm saying. I'll be like, what? Deadlands? I'm like, I don't have time to explain this. I have to go.
Go get my wallet.
Yeah.
Evangeline, very close to Evangelina, but Evangeline from Pioneer Library System says, when you finished writing the first book, did you ever dream that it would become a New York Times bestseller? And what was your reaction?
So I don't have it here, but it's at my parents' house, I think, but I make vision boards every year. That was the first year I ever made a vision board. And it was in January that I signed with my publisher and the book came out in August. So in January, I made this vision board and I put on it and I took a video where I put New York Times bestseller on it and I sent it to my friends and I was like, I know that this isn't going to happen, but I'm just putting it out there into the universe so that the universe knows that this is the goal at some point. And then it hit number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list and I had to be sedated because I was so shocked. I still don't believe it. I'm like, I think I've hallucinated this whole thing. But it's a really good hallucination. So I'm like, I'm not going to wake up from it. I'm just going to enjoy it. No, yeah, I think that you dream it, of course, you hope.
Of course, yeah.
But even my imagination is not big enough for all the things that have happened since book 1. It's truly I'll probably process it all in the next 6 to 10 years before it really sets in.
Accomplice is number 1 as well.
Oh, that's crazy. That'll take another 6 to 10 years to say.
Well deserved. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. That's nice.
Amanda from Morgantown Public Library says, after finishing Accomplice to the Villain, I have to know, how many books do you think will be in this series? And do you have a general idea as to when the next one will be released? The second part of that question is asked with giddy anticipation, because seriously, that ending has me instantly wanting the next book.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's honestly, I did a Q&A on Instagram yesterday, and every question was like, when's book 4? When's book 4? I don't know if I can announce when book 4 is, but I'll say that I'm writing it currently. Like it's in the drafting phase. I'm having a really good time. I am blowing through it, like probably the fastest that I've ever written a book, if that helps at all, because I too want to know what's going to happen. And they're like, oh, you should know. And I'm like, I know like the end, but I don't know what's going to happen in between that. I'm finding out too. And it's just as entertaining for me to find out. So I'm working on book 4 now. And yeah, that's all I can really say.
So do you know the end of just book 4, or do you know how the entire series is eventually going to end?
I've known the end of the series since I started writing book 1. Like I had the final scene in my head since book 1. So when I do finally get to writing that scene, it's going to be really emotional and very straight. I don't even like thinking about it because I'm like, that feels so far away, but it really isn't. And I think about this scene a lot, but I know exactly where we're going. And that's sort of how I outline. Like I loosely outline and like, we're going to hit this point, this point, this point, and this point. So I know start, middle, end, usually, and sometimes some stuff in between, but the rest is like, let's play and see what happens and what you guys want to do. And because you're not going to listen to me anyway, so I may as well just give into it.
There was somebody asking earlier, and I kind of lost track of the question, but you just mentioned that you outline, and they were asking how you keep all of the small details straight. Like, do you have a list or a spreadsheet so that you make sure you can refer back to things if you need to?
I probably should. That should be something I have. I don't. I have a notes app that looks like a murder board. Like it's crazy. It's a mess. No one can decipher it but me, which is actually good because if anyone ever got a hold of my phone, they'd have no idea what anything means.
Yeah.
A lot of the details I remember because it's just going to sound strange, but because the world feels so real to me and the characters, like I feel like I know them. So I remember things the way I remember things about like my friends or things they tell me. There's every now and again, I have to go back and reference something like really small, like this minor character, I don't remember what color their eyes were. We do have an Excel sheet for that. Thank God for my publisher. Thank you. I love you guys. Yeah, they're amazing. And they were like, let's make this Excel sheet so it can have like all the major and minor characters, like attributes so that you have it all laid out for you. And I was like, you're a genius. This is such a good idea. But yeah, the rest, I'm never shy about going back and referencing something from a book before. In fact, often when I do that, I get a funny idea to tie something from that book into the next book that I'm writing. So it's like the glossary for me is the books themselves.
It's a good glossary.
Yeah, it's an accurate one.
So Danielle from Killingly Public Library is asking, will there be any novellas or separate books for the side characters? And there was someone earlier that asked about the other love interests that are taking place beyond Evie and Tristan.
Yeah.
So maybe there could be some novellas or separate books.
There could be. There very well could be. I always say I'm never going to fully leave this world, I don't think, because there's so much to explore, even just outside of the villain's office. It's such a fun, like whimsical place to be. And I've written so many characters within these books that I'm like, if we had like 100 more pages with you, we would have such fun together. Like I'm literally like, I'll come back for you. Don't worry. I'll be back. So I have lots of plans to explore other characters within the books. Some of the side romances, and I hate even calling them that because I'm like, they're part of the story. They're a big part of the story. They're so much fun for me because it's like every time we bounce, I'm like, it's a new couple dynamic and it's a blast for me because it keeps everything so fresh and fun and unexpected. Yeah. So I will absolutely continue exploring some of our side romances, and perhaps I can't say anything officially, but absolutely will continue writing in this world as long as I possibly can.
Okay, I'm looking forward to a series about how the gods created the world.
Ooh.
I'll just send you all of my
You're like, I would like this, and this.
Here's some more ideas on how you need to stay in this world.
Fabulous.
Okay, so Serena from Spokane County Library District is saying, what was the most challenging part in your journey so far of becoming such a successfully published author?
I think everything has been so amazing that but of course, like with anything really good, there's always like caveats or downsides. And I think that the downsides don't weigh as much as all of the beautiful things that have come into my life. And I'm not just talking about book things. I have this amazing group of girlfriends, and they are like my sisters. I'm so close with them, and I met them through TikTok and being authors. And I literally text them. They're currently texting me right now. Like I talk to them so much, and I've gotten to meet so many amazing people that tell me amazing stories about finding my books or how my books help them get through a hard time. And some of the stuff that can get you down or can get you self-conscious about your writing or anything else, that stuff it stops mattering as much when you have someone like holding your hands and telling them like, your book saved my life. And that is like the most humbling thing that I think I've ever experienced in my entire life. I just started to cry. I'm literally going to cry right now because that is a very impactful thing for someone to say to me, because there's been many points in my life where I've turned to something that saved my life or something that's helped me get through a really hard time. And that is what this series did for me during my really hard time. So it's the fact that I could carry it over to even one person is like the biggest blessing. Everything else, I'm such a glass half full person, and it's okay for things to be bad sometimes. They can exist that way so we can process them and move on. But I think I've really, it's actually been good because I've been a people pleaser like Evie my whole life, and becoming an author, I kind of sort of had to focus on what is right for the story. And that's it. That's all that really matters, is what's right for the story and the characters. At the end of the day, you can't please everybody, and that's just not possible. And it's a really freeing thing when you realize like, no, I can't. So I'm just going to live very authentically and do things very authentically and be happy that way. And it's a lovely way to exist. So I've gotten so many good things out of it that even the hard stuff is not so hard.
Yeah. Well, and look at all the beauty and fun that you've given to us.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet.
We've had a lot of people ask about whether or not you still have a full-time job or if you're getting to write full-time, and how many hours a day you dedicate to writing.
So there's so much more admin than I ever thought possible when you become an author. The first part of my day is just going through my emails and like answering emails because I am so bad at answering my emails. So I am full-time writing now. I left my last nanny job, not this past February, but the February prior. And I've been nannying since I was 15. So it's like over 10 years of my life that I'd been nannying. Yeah. So it was hard to say goodbye to it because I love kids. I think they're so fun and amazing. They have the best imaginations. So yeah, I dedicate, it really depends on how much I'm traveling. I try to do a certain amount of words and I always say that I don't actually do this, but I give myself a really low word count so that my brain can be like, oh, I'm not kidding, like 300 words. I'm like, if you get 300 words down, golden. I always end up writing for a little longer and more. It's just like when you tell yourself you're getting on the treadmill for like 2 minutes, you're like, and then you end up on the treadmill for 20 minutes because you're like, I'm already walking. I may as well just do this. And I usually get really into it. It's just the opening my laptop that's the hard part. So once it's open and I'm going, it can be anywhere from like 3 to 8 hours. And if I'm on deadline, it's usually round the clock with like very minimal sleep. It is like my crazy deadline schedule. I don't recommend it. Don't do that. Don't be like me. Because I will literally be up to like 1 a.m, go to sleep, wake up at 4 a.m. and like keep going until it's done. And when you're done, it's like feels so good, but at what cost, really?
It's true.
To your sanity, to your sleep schedule, to your food schedule. Like, everything kind of goes out the window.
Eyes.
Yes, everything. But it's yeah, so that's usually, I don't really have a super organized schedule, but that's different for everyone. I've heard some people that have a very dedicated 9 to 5 writing schedule, and that's what they stick to. And you just have to do what works best for you and what you can be successful doing.
I think that's the information to take away, is that everybody's different and something different works for everybody.
Yes, that's 100% true.
I once had a coach that would say, you can do anything for 10 seconds. So that was like me, like trying to jog and count to 10 like a million times over.
Yes, that's like I do it with things when I'm nervous. I always go, you can be brave for this many seconds. I stole that from We Bought a Zoo. That if anyone's seen that movie, it's fabulous.
Is that what Matt Dillon? Not Matt Dillon.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And Scarlett Johansson. It was fabulous. But they said in the movie, he's like, I just need 20 seconds of courage. And that really stayed with me. I was like, I just need 20 seconds of like stupid bravery and I can do this. And then I can be scared when it's over. Like, and it works. It works. I'm like, I'm going to suspend this for 20 seconds.
It really does work. Okay. Yeah. Well, I can't believe that we're at the end of the hour, but I want to close with the same question that I close with for everyone, which is what book are you reading right now that everyone should run out to their library and check out immediately?
Okay. I know I said I was going to have this prepared, but I forgot. So let me go on my Kindle app because I am currently reading a historical romance because that's usually what I read when I'm drafting. It's hard for me to juggle fantasy in my head. It's a new, I haven't read this author before. It's my first time reading her, but her name is Loretta Chase and it's called Miss Wonderful. And thus far it's hysterical. She's very funny. So I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm a big historical romance fan. So if you like witty humor, historical romances have everything romantasy has, just usually without the magic, but they have like the dresses and the sword fighting and all the fun stuff. Sometimes they do have magic too.
Sometimes they do. You're right.
Sometimes they do.
I cannot believe that this hour has flown by so fast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for the wonderful universe that you've created for all of us. It's so beautiful. I've truly had the best time talking to you.
Thank you. I had so much fun talking to you. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for all your questions.
I want to echo that and extend a huge thank you to all of our viewers for tuning into our author talk today. Without your support, none of this would be possible. So we thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. As a reminder, if you scroll down below the live stream video to the resources area, you will find a link to order Hannah's book. So make sure you check that out. We look forward to everyone joining us next week to chat with New York Times bestselling author and communication expert Jefferson Fisher. Be sure to register for this and lots of other great events on your library's event page. I'm Brandon Adler. Have a good evening.
Bye, guys.